Hello and welcome to an episode that looks at how different types of communication used in advertising impact the consumer. Basically, what we are looking at is the effects of advertising. It is interesting to study how the consumer or the receiver of the communication responds to it all. In today's episode, we will attempt to understand the intricacies of how different strategies of advertising impact the consumer in various ways. We will examine the importance of recall of a product. We will look at what a consumer looks for when he advertises. We will see how a brand gets defined, how it influences the consumer, how it can signal quality, and finally, how it is meticulously built. We also will look at different buying situations, understood the difference between low involvement buying and high involvement buying, long-term and short-term memory, and why celebrities are used in ads. Sounds interesting, doesn't it? Why do consumers depend so much on advertising? Why are they so fond of ads? What benefits do they get from them? A major function of advertising is to create the recall of brand name. When a consumer goes in for a purchase, the first step is to remember the name of the brand or the thing he wants to buy. From the brand name, he remembers he will choose one that he will ultimately buy. So, depending on the ads he has seen, he will recall the names. Before we go any further, we must understand what this whole concept of a brand is. The formal definition of a brand being an identity does not give us a complete understanding. Let's simplify it a bit. There are many types of toothpaste in the market, but when we go to buy, we go by names like Colgate, Close-Up or Pepsodent. These are the different ones made by different companies. Each is a brand by itself, and to that extent, it's the identity. The toothpaste made by company A is brand Y, and the toothpaste made by company B is brand X. So, the brand is the simple way of recognizing a product from a specific source. The same applies for servicing also, like banking, airlines, and any other. We could also extend it to people and causes being advertised. So we see this is brand simplified. The first thing about a brand is its name, its colors, its logo and packaging. These make it possible for a consumer to recognize a particular brand separate from all others. These elements of identity create the link between the brand and the consumer. Our association, recognition and recall is because of all these symbols. So, we find that a brand name and logo are the means or the device by which we or the consumer recognizes and differentiates a brand amongst many. A brand indicates the quality of the product. The name itself indicates or stands for the level or type of quality of the product. Companies and products need to cater to different types of consumers and tastes and preferences. Everyone is not looking for top quality or the best always. Based on need and affordability, the demand is different. So, the brand name is an indicator of this. The brand comes from a particular manufacturer. It's the representation of the product that the manufacturer makes. Thus, it becomes a way of recognizing whose product it is or who makes it.
Pioneered precision. Tag Heuer watches became a legend, wanted by movie stars and kings. I'm Shah Rukh Khan, and I'm proud to be part of Tag Heuer's legend.
Along with the identification comes a responsibility from the producer about the quality and performance of the brand.
In a Maruti Suzuki.
From the consumer's point of view, he sees the commitment from the manufacturer and the brand conveys this to him. This responsibility from the producer reduces the risk of the consumer. Brands coming from companies and manufacturers that we trust or from people who have kept our faith and trust so far in the market are of great advantage to us as a consumer. Our uncertainty and risk as far as the performance and quality of the brand is concerned gets reduced tremendously. We are assured about the reliability of what we purchase and we know what we are buying will not fail us. Brands and names that we are familiar with or we know about make it easier for us to select what to buy. We need to work less for searching and selecting our buy. In this way, our effort and time gets saved, and this is how our cost gets reduced. Finally, the producer offers a promise of quality and guarantee through the brand. It is the brand which is the indicator of the offerings and commitments from the maker. It's a contract between the maker and the buyer. Based on the brand name and its reputation or image, you and I buy brands to suit our needs. We require varying quality or different levels of performance at different times. All the time, everyone is not buying top-class products for everything. So, in the market, we have to have products of various levels or grades. Brands indicate this difference and also convey the promise from the maker as to what level of product it is. Let us take an example. If we look at cars, we see many kinds of them catering to different tastes and preferences. Firstly, the company name itself indicates the kind of cars being made by them. BMW and Mercedes for top technology and luxury, while Maruti is people's car. Now within the range of Maruti, we have the Alto, which is for common people and is affordable for many and has very basic features. The next in the range, like the Ritz or Swift, are for the middle class, who have a bigger budget and look for quality and some special features. Then of course you have the XX4, which is more for status and style. And Kiashi is a luxury car which is totally for style and comfort. Now that we have understood what a brand means to the consumer and how important brands are for us, we need to look further. Brands need to be popular to sell themselves or to grow. They need to be liked by us and be on our list of favorites for ensuring their own success. So we need to build this brand or to develop it so that it is liked and preferred by the maximum number of people, and that is where advertising plays an important role. One of the reasons for advertising is to build the brand, but why build a brand? The first thing for a brand is to be a brand that is part of the list the consumer recalls. This is where advertising helps or works. It's a major function it performs. From the consumer's perspective, it helps to remember brands and especially the ones that make an impact. The repetition of the ads further puts this brand in the consumer's mind and does not allow them to forget it. The constant advertising that the consumer sees makes him feel confident and comfortable about the brand. The fact that brand is visible and keeps announcing its presence gives very positive signals to the consumer.
With MP3 player, FM with recording and 2 GB expandable memory. Ab apni suno.
Advertisements are meant to educate and inform the consumer about a new product or brand, features of a product, attributes and usefulness of a brand. So, for a consumer, the advertisements are important as they get their information, knowledge and inputs from the ads they see. Over a period of time, a consumer depends on them for all their requirements and queries. This makes consumer rely and believe in advertisements. It also gives them a level of comfort with brands and products. It's a relationship that they build with the ads. Brands that advertise seem more familiar to the consumer, and his faith in them is much more than on brands he has not seen ads for. In fact, this happens with all of us. If we go to the shop and see 3 different brands of soap, for 2 we have seen ads but not for the third one. We would choose any of the first 2 for buying and eliminate the third from our choices. Just because we did not see any ads, we are not too sure of what that soap would be like. We also wonder what kind of a brand would it be that has not even advertised itself. So this is how advertisements have an impact on the consumer. Their comfort level and reliability with a brand is built by the ads. The next thing that happens is that consumers conclude about the brands from the advertising that they see. Their opinion about the brand, their judgment about what the brand is like and who it is meant for and what is the quality of the brand all comes from the advertisements that they see. The media or the place where advertisements is seen is an indicator of the kind of brand it is. Brands meant for the masses will use more common TV channels like DD or Aaj Tak, which are watched by the common man. Exclusive and upper-ended brands use the more sophisticated channels like Star World or NDTV Good Times. The case is similar in print media also. The kind of newspapers or magazines is an indicator of the quality and level of the brand. The message, both its content and the way it is made, also convey a lot about the brand. The language used will identify with the set of people we want to target. Similarly, the model or celebrity or the endorser will be very similar to the target segment. Advertising is done for a brand or a cause or a personality. When we or the consumer is deciding to make a choice or most of the time buy, he is in a different situation at different times. Some situations are where he is buying something that is very low priced and routine and he buys that things very often. Typically, buying bread or a mouth freshener or a toothpaste would fall into this category. So, in such a situation, he is very casual in his choices and does not put too much of time and effort into making a selection. The other extreme and could be where he is buying something very special. It could be expensive or it could be rare or once in a lifetime buy. Buying a car or a piece of jewelry or an electronic product would be suitable examples. Here, since it is a very serious buy, the consumer is very concerned about making the choices or getting information before finalizing. A situation when a consumer is less concerned about what he or she buys and selects is called low involvement buying, and where it is a serious decision for the consumer is called high involvement buying. In both cases, the consumer's need for information and knowledge is going to be very different. The advertising has to meet and fulfill this need, and we find we need to create different kinds of advertisements for different situations. In the low involvement situation, the consumer is not looking for many details and thus does not need too much of information. The consumer makes selection of brand or item very fast and thus depends more on what comes to his mind first or what catches his attention. Since this is how the consumer is deciding, the advertiser now has to plan accordingly. The aim of the communication is to keep the brand name in the memory and recall of the consumer, Create a differentiation for the name amongst so many others that are competing for the consumer's attention. Be interesting and catchy so that it is easier for the consumer to recall and remember. The consumer is not looking for too many details or facts and figures and information about what the item is all about. So, the design of the message has to suit all these requirements. The advertisements that use more of color, graphics, animation, music and songs, jingles, famous personalities are the ones typically made for this need. These appeal to the consumer more on the emotional front and make an impact through the 5 senses of the consumer. In the high involvement situation, the consumer is looking for details and information since the decision is going to be based on logic and reasoning. The consumer makes a selection of brand or item very deliberately, makes comparisons and weighs up the features and prices, spends a lot of time and effort in collecting details and takes time to decide. Since this is how the consumer is deciding, the advertiser now has to plan accordingly. The aim of the communication is to keep the brand name in the memory and recall of the consumer by convincing them about the special features of the brand. Tell tangible facts about the brand or item to rationally convince the consumer. Create a differentiation for the name among so many others that are competing for the consumer's attention by showing how this one is different and unique. Prove the superiority and specialness of this brand by comparing with other brands or highlighting the differences. So the communication is rational and logical. It is informational and factual. A suitable example of this is the advertising for the small budget cars. These are bought for the economy and utility. So, the major deciding factors are price, petrol consumption, features. This therefore becomes totally a rational and logical decision. And this is exactly what the messages for such cars are all about. They communicate about the efficiency of the engine and petrol consumption. The kind of features offered in the minimum price is another approach. Making comparisons with other cars in the same category is another way of convincing the consumer about which one to choose.
The new Volkswagen Polo. Our engineers have tested its fuel efficiency.
An important effect of advertisements is to do with the memory of the consumer. Human beings exhibit 2 kinds of recall and memory. One is the short-term memory where things are remembered for a short while. It's like storing things on the surface of the mind, and so it comes back fast but also gets forgotten easily. Things that we take casually or are not too interested in are the ones we would just remember for a short while and forget very soon. We also would recall the messages only for a short while after seeing or hearing them. If we have recently seen the advertisement, then the chances of recalling it is more. The more the gap between the time we saw the ad and the time we try to remember it, the less are the chances of being able to recall it. From this, it emerges that for a message to be remembered, a person needs to see it all the time so that it is fresh in his mind. Also, the number of times the message or the advertisement is seen, the more are the chances of it being remembered and recalled as it remains fresh in the mind. Also, the advertisements have to be more catchy and interesting. Songs, slogans or jingles work very well for this, as also using popular models and faces. This is why we need to make catchy advertisements and show them again and again. The instant recall and recollection is created by this attractive message, repetition and constant reminder. This is more of the emotional approach in advertising. But we all do not have only this kind of memory. There are things we remember for long. We have not forgotten our childhood or some lessons from school that we did long back. So there is another kind of memory that lasts long. This is called long-term memory. Certain things go deep into our mind and we never seemed to forget them. They seem to be stuck inside. For the success of a brand, this is where the brand would like to be. Long-term memory is helped by convincing the consumer on the basics of the specialness of the brand or the performance and the reliability of it. More of information and facts will establish the image of the brand and it will not be forgotten easily. So, our approach in advertising is more informational. We make advertisements with lots of details, information, diagrams and tables giving lot of content and knowledge to the consumer. The genuineness and truthfulness of the message is also very important. What we say about a brand or our cause and how we say it influences the consumer to form his opinion and impression. The message should be clear and correct. It should not mislead or form a wrong impression on the consumer's mind. For creating the impact, brands, you may need to talk about both the strong and weak points about themselves. Accept the drawback or objections and then convince the consumer. This sounds more genuine and clean. Brands also make comparisons with others and highlight their own positives and show how, why they are better. Overall, brands should not promise more than what they actually are or can perform as. This way, the consumer's trust is created and the user is not disappointed with what he buys and uses. He buys with some hopes and aspirations about the performance of what he is buying. This hope is created by the messages and advertisements. If the performance does not fit or match the hope, then the consumer is disappointed and loses faith in the brand. This hope is created by the ad, so it is important not to overstate or to talk too much and raise the expectations. Thus, this is an important aspect of the message, design and content. It affects the consumer in a big way and influences his attitude towards the brand and the final impression in his mind. That's why we see messages that say that the effect may vary from person to person, or you need to use it for a minimum number of days before the effect can be seen. Messages or the advertising needs to be reliable and credible. The trust and dependability is built by getting the faith of the consumer or buyer. The image and the reputation of the brand or company or person advertising is the first contributor to building the faith of the consumer. Advertising about the image or the company and its overall functioning is the way to build the image of the brand. The positive image creates a good platform for further messages and communication. Next is the kind of message and its content. Truthful messages, messages accepting the both good and bad points of a brand, messages using reliable personalities or public figures all serve the purpose of creating and winning the faith and trust of the consumer.
Bring your Maruti Suzuki only to the Maruti Suzuki Service Network.
Another method used to build the credibility of the brand and the message is by the use of a personality. A person who is famous or has a very good public image is used to convey the positiveness of the brand and to build an image for it. These are what are called endorsers for the brand. They could be famous film stars, sports stars or other celebrities, and at times even the common man or the user who gives his first-hand personal experience is used. what they talk about the brand and what their own image and personality is, and the feel of specialize in all create an impact on the consumer's mind. There are many examples of this. Actor Amitabh Bachchan is now considered to be like a father figure, giving advice and guiding people. He has a very credible image and people look up to him as dependable entity. His guidance and words make a tremendous impact. That's the reason why he is used for the polio eradication messages.
हर बच्चा हर बार सिर्फ 2 बूंद जिंदगी के। क्या आप अपने राजा के लिए 2 कदम नहीं चल सकते?
Or even Siemens.
हरिया, टूट पड़ा ना आसमान सर पे। कब से कह रहे हैं तुमको कि घर ऐसा जोड़ो जो सदियों तक रहे। बिना नी सीमेंट, सदियों के लिए।
Diamonds, banks and investments. They all use him to portray their own image.
IC नहीं, ICICI Prudential Life Insurance.
Other suitable examples are cricketer Sachin Tendulkar,
My story, valuable as any medal I've received in my life. Whatever level you reach,
or some of the Miss Indias or housewives and children used for various products and brands suiting their image and the type of product or thing advertised. So this is how the company or the brand establishes its image and trust in the consumer's mind. From today's lesson, we are able to understand how all the planning and structuring in advertising is done based on the response of the consumer and the impact on the consumer's mind and behavior. In today's episode, we saw how different strategies of advertising impact the consumer in various ways. We saw the importance of recall, what a consumer looks for when he advertises, how a brand gets defined, how it influences the consumer, how it can signal quality, and finally, how a brand is built. We also saw different buying situations, understood the difference between low involvement buying and high involvement buying, long-term and short-term memory, and why celebrities are used in ads. This is all for today. I hope you liked this program and found it useful. Goodbye.